Hi, everyone, and Happy New Year. My name's Dara Silver, Senior Program Director at the North Carolina Arts Council. Thank you all for joining us today for the Spark the Arts webinar. For those who have just entered, we're asking folks to turn their camera off as well as their mute. We're going to have a number of speakers today, and as those speakers come on, we're going to have the cameras turn on so you can actually see their face. But again, thank you for joining us. We're so pleased to be in community with you all, especially over these past challenging years. We've got over 100 people registered for this webinar today. And please note, we are recording this webinar. It's going to be made available later to be viewed on our website, and we will email registrants when that has been posted, so you will be able to access it later. If you need to access Zoom's live transcript, click on the closed captioning icon at the bottom of your screen. It's CC and it says show captions. All right, right now we can go to the next slide and we'll do an overview of the agenda. So during today's webinar, you will meet the North Carolina Arts Council staff, learn about our agency, explore our new website, review our grant guidelines, grant opportunities, and get an in-depth understanding of our Spark the Arts grant for fiscal year 23-24, as well as learn how to use our grant portal, GoSmart. We kindly ask that if you have any questions during the presentation, please write your question in the chat box, and we will answer those questions during our Q&A session. We're going to answer as many of those questions as we can, and if not, we will get back with you. So now I'd like to begin our staff introductions with Jeff Bell.
Thank you, Dara, and welcome everyone. I'm Jeff Bell, the Executive Director for the North Carolina Arts Council. We're excited to have so many of you join us today. The North Carolina Arts Council is dedicated to providing important arts funding and resources all across the state. Our staff works tirelessly to assist grant applicants and recipients. I'm glad that we have the opportunity to share some information about Spark the Arts grant and to introduce you to some of our staff. Now I'd like to pass it to our Deputy Director, Dr. Tamara Holmes Brothers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Jeff. Again, my name is Dr. Tamara Holmes Brothers. As Jeff mentioned, I am the Deputy Director here at the North Carolina Arts Council. I am specifically charged in assisting in the design, development, and implementation of our agency programs. I also help recommend policies that realize the agency's mission of arts for all people, as well as centering institutional equity, diversity goals, and outreach within this work. And I'll pass it on to my colleague, Vicki.
Thanks, Tamara. My name is Vicki Vitiello. I am the Director of Operations at the North Carolina Arts Council. I've been with the agency for about 26 years now, and I started my work as a program director out in the field supporting grants activities, but more recently I have been kind of on the management side of things. In my role, part of what I do is oversee the grants office and budgeting, and specifically I'm here today to answer any questions around guidelines, compliance, rules, those kind of things that we'll get to at the end of the webinar.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Aguiar, and I serve as Theater and Literature Program Director. I also work with multi-arts interdisciplinary projects, kind of depending on whether or not they incorporate theater and the performing arts or other elements of the literary arts, as well as working with some of our presenting organizations as well. So glad that you're all here, and I'll pass it off to Jamie.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Katz-Court. I am the Music and Dance Program Director for the North Carolina Arts Council. And like Jeff, I also work with our presenting organizations and those folks who have venues who are bringing in different performing arts. And it's great to see you all here today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will pass it along to Kathleen Collier.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Collier. I'm the Arts and Education Director and Accessibility Coordinator here at the Arts Council. I primarily work with schools and school districts to support artist residencies and arts experiences in schools, and as well as with organizations that provide arts learning experiences for youth audiences. As the accessibility coordinator, I'm here to serve as a resource for the field to provide information on best practices and policies with regards to developing inclusive programming. And I also work closely with organizations that focus on arts accessibility and arts and healthcare. And I'll pass it on to my colleague, Zoe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zoe Van Buren. I'm the Folklife Director for the North Carolina Arts Council. I oversee our Folklife program and administer all of the programs and projects we have that support folklife and traditional arts across North Carolina, including the Heritage Awards, Folklife apprenticeships, and traditional arts programs for students. For Spark the Arts, if your project involves sustaining living cultural traditions, folklife, traditional arts, community folkways, you'll work with me. And I'll pass it over to Karen again.
Hey y'all, I am the program administrator. I primarily work with the artists and organizations team, and I am the person if you have any GoSmart related questions, which is our online grants platform. I am the person that can help you with all of those. And I will pass it back to Tamara.
Thank you, Karen. So at this time, we'll give a brief overview of the North Carolina Arts Council. So many of you may be aware that the North Carolina Arts Council was created as a state agency in 1967 to support the arts for all citizens of the state. We do so by providing funding and resources to artists, arts organizations, and providers, local arts councils, and local government. In addition, we have a commitment to diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion, what we call our DEAI, and believe that the arts in the state are enriched when voices representing all people are respected, heard, acknowledged, and exhibited. In the past 4 years, the time has particularly been challenging for the arts sector, as many of you have seen firsthand. With this in mind, we've worked hard to reprioritize and redistribute funding as equitably as possible to assist the needs of the arts field. We distributed $10 million in CARES Act funding and are in the midst of distributing an additional $15 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds. The Spark the Arts grants for fiscal year 22 and 23 and this upcoming cycle for fiscal year 23-24 are a part of that funding. Now we'll pass it on to my colleague, Kathleen.
Great, thanks, Tamara. And just a friendly reminder, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll do our best to address them throughout and towards the end as well. We have some time allotted for questions. All right, to begin our overview of our grants, we're going to start with visiting our website here at ncarts.org. Once you're on our homepage, you'll select Grants and Resources, then click on Grants. We highly encourage all applicants to carve out some time to really get to know the information provided on this webpage. It includes links to our general grant information and eligibility requirements, grantee requirements, our grants dashboard, and grant application resources and assistance. This will really help you, to just understand some of the eligibility requirements of receiving funding from the Arts Council, as well as just making sure you're prepared for the application itself and what to expect if awarded a grant. So first, if we could click on general grant information and eligibility requirements. Again, there's a lot of information, so I do encourage you to go back during your own time through this information, but I'm going to share with you some of the highlights. For our fiscal year 2023-2024 grant cycle, a majority of the grant deadlines is March 1st. This will be clearly indicated in the grant application guidelines. The applications are now open and available in our online grant portal, GoSmart. Once applications come in, program directors will review them to make sure that they meet the program grant category eligibility requirements, make sure that the application is complete. Any incomplete applications or those that don't meet the criteria will not be reviewed for funding. Please note the project period, and we'll go into this more detail in the presentation, but takes place between July 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024. And all applications are required to have a UEI number. This is a unique entity number, which can be found on sam.gov if you need to register for one. And if you scroll down, you'll see here what our eligibility requirements are for the North Carolina Arts Council for our organizations. And there are 3 criteria. The organization must be a nonprofit based in North Carolina and in good standing with the state of North Carolina. The organization must have evidence of producing quality arts programs for at least 2 consecutive years and must have prior year organizational cash operating expenses of at least $20,000. For any reason, the organization or applicant does not meet these requirements, there is the possibility to apply in partnership with a fiscal agent for Spark the Arts, and we'll go over the fiscal agency policy in more detail in today's presentation. Also, if you keep on scrolling down, you'll see, again, details regarding what cannot be funded with Arts Council funds. So it's important to review that information before developing your proposal and project budget in the application. We also, as I said, there's more details about the fiscal agency policy, and you'll also see information as you continue to scroll down regarding our accessibility requirements. As the accessibility coordinator, I am more than happy to answer any questions you may have. And you can also find out more details on our grants dashboard regarding accessibility requirements if awarded a grant with the North Carolina Arts Council. But again, please do not hesitate to reach out. I'm more than happy to discuss this as well with you. If you could also, if we go back to the original grants information page, we'll click on grantee requirements. Great, thank you. Again, this is another page to be very familiar with. This gives you a sense of what to expect if awarded a grant from the North Carolina Arts Council. So it is very important that to keep in mind that this information, and if you're partnering with a fiscal agent, is applicable with both the applicant and the fiscal agent. We cannot distribute any funding until all the contract paperwork is completed. And it's important to note, upon completion of a grant funded project, grantees are required to complete a final report. And the more specific details about what may be included in the final report are located here, as well as on our grants dashboard. Any funding, let's say if awarded a grant and is not spent by the end of the project period, you'll have to return to the grants office. Again, I would just take the time to go through, get a sense of what would be required. And we also have this information on our grants dashboard. And then finally, if you see grants for organizations here on the sidebar, it'll give you a list of all of our organization grants that are available at this time. For today's conversation, we're going to be focusing on the Spark the Arts grant. And now I'm going to hand it off to my wonderful colleagues, Dara Silver, Zoe Van Buren, Jeff Aguiar, and Jamie Katz-Court, who will go over the Spark the Arts details. Thank you. Dara.
Thanks, Kathleen. So we're here to talk about Spark the Arts grants. They are to support arts providers as they re-engage with the public through a combination of programming, marketing, rebuilding staff capacity, and facilitating safety protocols. This broad project category replaces project support, which you may have been familiar with in the past, for now, and includes 2 application tracks. There's audience re-engagement and audience inclusion. So projects that previously may have been applied through an Arts Equity Project grant or a Military and Veterans Healing Arts grant are welcome within this category. Again, grants should be submitted via GoSmart by 11:59 on Wednesday, March 1st. That's our deadline, and it's a hard cutoff. Applicants may apply for one grant ranging from $3,000 to $30,000. So that's the amount that you can ask for. If you received a Spark the Arts grant in fiscal year 22-23, you are eligible to apply for one in fiscal year 23-24. Applicants should meet the eligibility criteria or may apply with a fiscal agent who meets the eligibility criteria. So for example, if your organization has been producing arts programming for more than 2 years and has past organizational expenses of $20,000 and under, so that means you don't currently meet eligibility criteria, you would be eligible to apply using a fiscal agent. But we really do encourage you to speak with program directors just to make sure that you are eligible. So the scope of the Spark the Arts grant places a special emphasis on strategies and initiatives to engage audiences and participants in your work. This could be new programming. This could also support existing programming that you're doing as an organization. So grant applications will be considered again in 2 tracks based on your audience goals. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. This grant is really focused towards audiences because we've been given funding to help re-engage audiences through the pandemic. So we know that audience, how you reach audiences has changed because of the pandemic. So this grant really is to support you re-engaging or including new voices. So again, re-engagement, you're bringing back audiences or you're reimagining engagement with audiences. And then inclusion, you're seeking a new audience or investing in a new voice. So some examples of re-engagement projects may include artistic programming selected to encouraging audiences to re-engage with the arts organization or the arts provider, enhanced marketing campaign or a special initiative for the upcoming season, enhanced safety protocols or staffing relating to audience engagement. But again, the focus really needs, and the story that you tell needs to be on how you're re-engaging those audiences, even though the ask might be for safety or for marketing or other aspects. So examples of inclusion projects can include projects designed to reach previously under-engaged communities, such as communities of color, disability communities, rural communities, economically disadvantaged communities, or any kind of other underserved community. That include collaborative planning with the community served. And I think that's something to really point out. For the inclusion track, what we would really like to see is how are you bringing those voices to the table and how are they a part of the project that's being designed to serve their community? So if it's the disability community, do you have a task force? Do you have some people who are part of this community that you are working with to better understand the needs and interests of that community? And then how does the project align with those needs and interests? Other examples could be artistic programming that uplifts the work of artists from underserved communities, or programs that are focusing specifically on creative aging, military and veterans, and arts and healthcare environments. And for those projects, you would then want to speak with Kathleen Collier, since that's her specialty. So now I'm going to hand it off to Zoe, who's going to talk more about tiers and project period.
Thanks, Dara. As mentioned earlier, you may apply in this grant for as little as $3,000 and as much as $30,000. Keep in mind, though, as you're thinking about what your grant ask will be, that a cash match is required. And the cash match requirement is also determined by your county's tier ranking from the North Carolina Department of Commerce. There's a handy link to go review your 2023 status. And we definitely recommend checking that annually, as your county's status may have changed. If you are in a tier 2 and 3 county, and these are considered to be more sort of economically stable, prosperous counties, you may apply for up to 2/3 of the overall project expenses. This means that at the high end, you could apply for a $30,000 grant and then would show a cash match as opposed to an in-kind match of a minimum of $15,000 for a total of $45,000 in overall project expenses. So whatever grant amount you're asking for, up to half that amount, you would be providing in a cash match. Applicants from tier 1 counties, however, these are considered to be economically distressed counties in our state. They are not required to provide any match. However, showing other sources of support may still strengthen your application. Please note your cash match from this grant may not come from any other state or federal sources, as this money does have federal origins and is coming from a state agency. Grant funds may be used for artist fees, marketing, interpretive materials, contractual fees, including contractual personnel, equipment, other costs specifically related to the project. Grant funds may not be used for certain expenses like food or beverages for hospitality or entertainment functions, art sales and auctions, capital expenditures, fundraiser events. And there's a full list of those ineligible expenses on the general grant guidelines page that we saw earlier. If you have any questions about eligible expenses, we're standing by to help. Recognizing that there's an especially strong need for operating support right now as we reemerge from the pandemic, Spark the Arts applicants may use up to 50% of the grant amount for administrative overhead expenses, and that includes staff salaries that are directly related to the project. Please note also that projects involving school-aged children taking place outside of the classroom can apply for Spark the Arts grant funds. However, if your project is taking place as part of the school day experience, you should refer to the Arts and Education Grant Guidelines and reach out to our colleague Kathleen Collier, who's Arts and Education. So what kind of timeline can you expect with this application? As Kathleen had mentioned earlier, the project period for funding is July 1st, 2023 through the end of June 2024. However, as many of you may have experienced, may know, our agency cannot issue contracts for grant awards until after the state budget is passed. That could take place between June and August. So it's very likely that if you're funded, you may not actually receive the news of your grant award or your contract until August. Also then allowing for the time that it can take to receive all contractual paperwork and process check requests. It could be maybe October before you receive funds, so please plan accordingly. If you do receive a grant and want to begin your project before your funds arrive, you're in a position where you're okay to do that. You may reimburse yourself for any expenses that you incurred for that project going as far back to July 1st of 2023. How are we making funding decisions? We engage an advisory panel consisting of arts professionals, artists, cultural experts from all across North Carolina. They review applications using the following evaluation criteria. Number one, artistic and cultural value of the program. Are the artists involved prepared with the right skills and relevance for this project? Does the programming provide deep and meaningful cultural or aesthetic experiences for the audience? Number two, benefit of the program for the audience, participants, and broader community, and relevance to the applicant's audience engagement goals. Why this project in this place with these artists? Who's likely to participate? How will you be reaching them? What will they experience? Number three, involvement of artists and representative community partners as appropriate to project themes and content. Meaning, is this project planned with the input of stakeholders? Who is helping make decisions in your program design? How will you know that this project is of interest to the community? And number four, feasibility of project and organizational capacity to implement the program. Does your budget look good, well-balanced, realistic? Are there enough capable hands on deck to pull it off? Is the timeline manageable? So the panelists will score on each of these criteria, which will help us then determine funding cutoffs and the percentage of grant request awarded. How do you get started? I will now pass it off to my colleague, Jeff Aguiar.
Hello, everyone. I'm trying to capture questions and move them over, so apologies for that little delay. Some of what I will speak to actually addresses some of those questions. And then ultimately, I think it's really important to recognize that we do encourage connecting with relevant program directors in terms of the arts discipline focus areas so that you can get some of this one-on-one time to sort of wrangle through the information that you're seeking. But ultimately, what I'm going to talk about is our our application questions, excuse me. And in the application questions, you see them on the website before you actually go into GoSmart, which is our application grant application portal. So you can preview those, cut and paste them into a Word document and do all of that work. A little bit of word of caution in terms of GoSmart is you're going to want to save as often as possible. Karen will talk about that a little bit more later. In terms of the application questions, what we really want for you to be concerned about is two things. One, ensuring that you're selecting the appropriate track, whether it be re-engagement or inclusion. A large portion of that will depend upon sort of the ratio of programming activity. If the bulk of the work that you're doing is bringing back audiences that you have not seen in a while, you've had a previous relationship and you just want for them to come back, and there's a few things that you're thinking about bringing in new audiences, you're probably most likely going to fall into re-engagement. If you're thinking about spreading going out into new areas, finding new voices, finding new perspectives, and bringing them into your space, or collaborating with them across your community with a few activities that are designed to bring in folks that you already have relationships with, you are most likely to be in inclusion. That can be something that is worked with your program director in terms of getting your application prepared for submission. What I would strongly suggest, because I don't want to go through all of the questions line by line, I think that we have an opportunity to do, you'll have an opportunity to do that and really digest that information as you get into the application itself, but really consider linking the questions to the evaluation criteria that Zoe just highlighted. So in essence, in terms of what we are trying to do in setting up the relationship between you, the applicant, and our panelists who help recommend for funding, is that you are helping to define what artistic and cultural value are. What are the ways that you can tell that story? It is artistically valuable because we have these artists who have had storied careers for the past 3 decades involved, and this is what they plan to do with audience. It has cultural value because we have these 7 strategic partners across our community that are working with us and are in the planning process with us. And that's where we see the cultural value. So thinking about each of those criteria, you can actually link them directly to questions. So in terms of number 1, identifying the primary engagement goal, you're linking across all 4 criteria. When you get into the overview of the project, you might be highlighting the artistic and cultural value of the program while also hinting at the feasibility of the program. This year, new, because I know we have some previous applicants in Spark the Arts, we have a request for a timeline for a project that directly addresses feasibility within the project. As a side note, what you put in your application does not necessarily have to be a hard and fast commitment. So if you say your programming is going to happen in February of 2024, we understand and can work with some of the shifts and changes that might be happening in terms of perhaps the venue might not be available as you intended. You know, you didn't get notification, and there have been some factors. That would be why you would want to stay in contact with your program director. So as those things might shift and change, even within the application period, right? So if you submit on February 26th, you've still got 4 days. Oh no, I got this letter of support, I want to get it in, reach out to us and we can work with that. Other things that I would highlight would be ultimately that you're working to build your case for funding and grounding it through these questions toward the evaluation criteria. So describing your planning process for the project and indicating how artists and key community partners are or will be involved demonstrates artistic and cultural value. It also speaks to the literal community engagement that you're doing, and it reinforces the feasibility of the project. So as you're tackling these questions, keep those evaluation criteria close at hand so that you can make sure that you're marking through your application and building a narrative that says not only do you have a valuable project that contains artistry and cultural value, but also you have the wherewithal and the community support to actualize all of the programming that you propose within the work. You will be required to submit an itemized project budget, as well as artist work samples that demonstrate the proficiency of the artists involved with the project. This does not necessarily mean that we want to see, you know, a flashy sizzle reel that's been overproduced and strung together by a high-end marketer. It's really just to show panelists, 1, that you have an idea of the line items that you're tackling in terms of your project, and then 2, that you have folks that are coming on board or folks that are already within your organization that are in fact artist professionals or people that live in a space of working with the arts in a truly intimate fashion. With that, I will hand it off to Jamie.
All right, thank you, Jeff. So for those of you who are on the call who don't meet those initial criteria of being a 501c3 nonprofit organization, or have 2 years of programming under your belt, or prior year organizational cash operating expenses of at least $20,000, we do have this mechanism called fiscal agency where you are able to still apply for a grant in partnership with a fiscal agent. And the fiscal agent does then need to meet those 3 criteria that you can see on the website. And the other thing to make sure of as you're finding an organization to work with as a fiscal agent, the fiscal agent also needs to be in good standing with the state of North Carolina. And you can look that up on the state's Office of State Budget Management website. Because for the state to provide those funds, all the paperwork still needs to be in order. Likewise, the fiscal agent needs to accept the legal and fiduciary responsibility for the grant funding that is being awarded. Fiscal agents can charge a service fee of up to 10% of the grant amount if they wish, but the management of the project is still the responsibility of you as the applicant, you, the person or organization running the program or the project. So you will still have the oversight of the project, and you can also use grant funds to help cover that fiscal agent fee. So you can include that fiscal agent fee as a line item in the budget on your application. So in order to use a fiscal agent, there are some additional rules and additional paperwork that needs to be completed. You and the fiscal agent will need to have an agreement signed together that shows the agreement of if a fee will be charged and how much, and any terms of resolution. There is a link to a sample fiscal agent agreement on the Arts Council website, and you can download that to get some ideas of what a fiscal agent agreement looks like. If you do receive a grant working with a fiscal agent, both you and the fiscal agent will sign the grant award contract and submit contracting paperwork. This includes the notarized no overdue taxes form, and both you and the fiscal agent will need to have that EIN number and a UEI number before your grant funds can be dispersed. Also, both the fiscal agent and the applicant will be required to sign off on the final report at the end of the project period. And the grant check or funds are typically sent directly to the fiscal agent, and the funds are dispersed for the payment of the project as outlined in the fiscal agency agreement that you'll have already put together. Please note that any payments from the fiscal agent to individuals or entities that are not 501c3 entities are taxable or may be taxable income. Again, just to reiterate, fiscal agents do not have creative authority over the funded projects. The ultimate management of the Spark the Arts project is the responsibility of that primary grantee. The fiscal agent is not a co-producer of the project and should not list the project on their website as part of their programmatic offerings. However, they can list the fiscal agent service itself as part of their scope of work. And you cannot swap fiscal agents once your grant contracts are signed by all parties. So if a fiscal agency agreement is terminated, the terms and conditions of your grant contract with the North Carolina Arts Council also end up being terminated. And finally, organizations applying directly to the Spark the Arts category cannot also act as fiscal agents for another applicant. So organizations that receive their county's grassroots arts program allocation can serve as fiscal agents for Spark the Arts applicants, and organizations can provide fiscal agency for up to 3 applicants per granting cycle or per fiscal year. And I think with that, we will turn it over to Karen, who can show you how to access and navigate through GoSmart.
Hey y'all, thanks Jamie. We are going to go over GoSmart, which is our grant portal, so the place that you will actually be applying to Spark the Arts through. You can get to it through our page here. If you just scroll up to the application information section, you can click the GoSmart grant portal button right here. It'll take you right there. Or if you go back to the very top of the page and go back to grants and resources, hit grants, and scroll down to this bar over here, you'll also see the button here for GoSmart grant portal. So you'll click that, and it will take you to our GoSmart portal right here. If you have not already created a profile with us, this is the place that you'll do that. So you'll click here to create a new grant profile, and it will walk you through all the steps that are required, all the information that's needed. I'm going to go ahead and share with you a sample profile that we have put together so that you can see kind of what it looks like from when you're actually in the application. So here's our test account. What you're going to want to go and do is go to the current programs and applications tab right here. So from here, you'll go to the current programs and applications tab right here. And this is a list of all of the grants that we have offered, including grants from previous years that have final reports still due. So there's a lot here. So you'll scroll down this page. I think it's about 7 or 8 down here. Keep scrolling until you find Spark the Arts Grants 2023-24. There'll be a blue start button right here. I've already started the application, so it says edit. You'll go in and you'll hit edit. And from there, it will take you directly into the application. So you'll see right here on the top left-hand side, we kind of have a menu of the different pages in the application. So you can either use this menu right here to click through to the different pages, or you can go from page 1, scroll all the way down, fill out all the sections, save your work, and there'll be a button that pops up to move on to the next section. So we'll go in, we'll say yes to all the terms, we'll save our work, and it'll give us an option to move on to the next page. You'll see it right here. So we've got a couple different sections. We have our project contact section, which is pretty straightforward. We ask for contact information. We ask for information from an authorized signator, which is the person that will be the person who can actually sign off on paperwork and contracting. So that might be different than the primary project contact. The next page is the fiscal agent page. Not everybody is necessarily going to have a fiscal agent. So for those of you that do not, you just move right along to the next page, which is the organizational information page right here. This page, again, if you're not an organization, you don't have to fill this out. So if you're a public school, a municipality, or an individual, you skip right along to the next section. And then this takes us to our project information and narrative. And this is the section where we have some longer form questions. So this is a section that we highly recommend that y'all either put together your answers in a separate Word document or Google document and then copy paste into here. It's just a little bit easier. And you'll want to make sure as you're going that you're hitting the blue save work option as you go, because if you click next, it does not automatically save your work. So that's just a little tip as we go. The next section that you'll see is our project budget expenses section. So this is where you're going to be listing all of your expenses for your project. So we're going to just, for example's sake, talk about the example where you are a tier 2 or tier 3 county. You're an applicant in a tier 2 or tier 3 county where you have a 1/3 cash match and you're applying for the full award, $30,000. You're going to want to make sure that these two categories here, this first one, the grant amount category, this is the category that should add up to the amount that you are asking us for, the amount that you are applying for. So if you're applying for $30,000, this number at the bottom right here should be $30,000. And this number right here in the column next to it is applicant cash match. So that's the money that you're providing to match the amount that you're applying for. And that would be $15,000. So this number down here should equal $15,000. So the next page is going to be our project budget income page. And so this is the income, and this page should equal your expenses page. So your expenses and your income should equal each other. One thing to note with this, I kind of just put in some dummy information here, but under North Carolina Arts Council grant amount requested, you're going to want to make sure that that matches the previous page, that is at $30,000 or whatever the amount is that you're applying for right here. The next section of our application is letters of support. So we're going to ask that you upload a few letters of support from key partners. The page after this is for work samples. Work samples can be a little finicky. one thing to note about this is you'll see that we've got buttons for images, audio, and documents. So if you have files in those formats, what you're going to want to do is just attach them right here. If you have videos or large files, we're going to ask you to use the web link collection form, which if you click right here, it'll pop up a new document and you'll fill that out. It'll have a space for you to add a link to a YouTube link or whatever else in there, along with some other details, and then you'll upload that as a document. This is also uploading work samples is a two-step process. So first you will click the blue attached document or audio or image section, and then you'll attach it. And then that will take you to a page that kind of looks like this. You click the green button and you'll attach whatever media that you want right here. You'll return to your application and you'll see that nothing's attached down here. So this is the part 2 where you're going to want to go to click the blue button again, scroll down, and you'll see any files that you just uploaded should appear here. So you'll click the checkbox, go down to the blue button here, click save, and then it'll save and you'll be able to see as you scroll down. Now it's attached to your application. So the last section here is the additional support materials page. This is a page that's optional for any additional support materials you might want to include. They can be things like business plans, marketing plans. But again, this is an optional section. And then this takes you to the certification page. And after that, you click submit. It will not let you submit unless you have completed all of the required questions. And once you have those, you'll be able to click submit and it will be officially in our application cycle. So I will hand it back over to Dara to talk about projects.
So who to talk to about projects? We are kind of separated by discipline, so you can see the different disciplines on here of who you need to talk to. If you're doing a visual arts, craft, or film project, please speak with me. Theater and literature, speak with Jeff Aguiar. Music and dance, speak with Jamie Katz-Court. If it's an arts in education, accessibility, or arts and healthcare project, speak with Kathleen Collier. And again, for Spark the Arts, that's for after school, weekend, or summer programs. If it's an in-school project, you'll want to look at arts and education grants. That's a different category. Zoe Van Buren for folk and traditional arts and community arts. And if you don't know, that's why we have Karen. So she'll connect with you and she can point you in the right direction. Next slide, please. So application support and resources. We are here to help you. Please call or email individual program directors directly. And we're happy to schedule a one-on-one appointment to really talk through maybe potential projects and maybe be able to settle on one that we might feel that that's the strongest to apply for, because you can only apply for one. We're also available to review any drafts that you might have. We just ask that you get in touch with us and give us some prior notice so we have time to read over it, perhaps have another conversation with you or communicate with you via email. So we're here to help you have the most successful application going into the panel process. We are recording the Spark the Arts webinar and it's going to be posted back on our website. Again, we'll let you know when that happens. And we also have a number of virtual office hours coming up. So those are office hours. A number of us will be there. And we typically will briefly go over the grant again if you're needing some more information or if you have a specific question that you wanted to ask. And then you could just always come to this, or we can schedule one-on-one. So we've got additional time to speak with us and answer your questions throughout this process. All right, next slide. Now questions. So now we're going to be joined by Vicki Vitiello, our Director of Operations, and are ready to answer those questions that you've entered in the chat box. And if we can't answer any of those questions, we will get back with you. Again, please reach out to us. So Jeff, Vicki, are you still here?
Yes, Vicki's on camera.
Yes, I'm sorry. It took me a second to unmute. Yes, I'm here.
So Jeff, What you got for us?
All right, we actually, what I love about this list of questions is it demonstrates the diversity of experience, diversity of situation, diversity of the arts nonprofit field across the state. And so I will go ahead and launch in. I will try to mention names just to kind of perk people's ears up in relationship. Some of the questions have been answered, but I do want to honor that they were put in there. So I will give them, and they might be a repeat, but I just want to make sure that we're covering everything. So the first question is, what is a cash match, from Renee Fisher?
That's a great question. And there's some more information that we can give you on that. But typically a cash match is something that something has to be paid for. So it's got to be paid from your organization's expense. So if you're looking to match a grant by some time that you're actually paying staff, you could use that as a cash match. If you are using funds that you've been able to get from other sources, say from earned revenue or from additional sponsors or foundations, that is actual cash. You can use that as your cash match. What we're not talking about is in kind. So if somebody is donating you space, if they are donating you something to use, that there's no cash involved, you cannot use that to match your grant that you're asking for. Is that right, Vicki?
Yes.
Great. And I know that we also have glossaries within the application. So if you find that you've lost that definition, you can reach out or you can use that resource as well. Another question that we have is, if we are in a tier 2 or 3 county seeking to provide programming in a tier 1 county, which matching requirements must we meet, from John Quillen?
Yeah, I would say that is a good one. It's a good thing to discuss with your program director. I think if we could get a clear understanding of the budget and the programs, it might give us a little bit more clarity on how to answer it. Typically, it's going to be tied with where your organization is, which is going to determine if you're going to need a cash match or to determine what tier that you're in. That's typically where it's based in. So you need to look at where your 501c3 is based at. But here again, speak with a program director because there might be some nuance there. Vicki, anything else?
Perfect. That's exactly right.
Fantastic. Our next question is that UEI applications are taking forever to be processed by SAM.gov. What do we do if they don't give us a number by the end of the application period, from Kathy Gouge?
I'm going to pass that to Vicki.
All right. So we've seen this nightmare for a while now. The UEI is required. We can't not have it. But if you are in the process of negotiating that with SAM.gov to get your number, and it's coming on March 1st, and you are wanting to submit your application without it, you can put a dummy number in there, but you have to let us know the status of your work with SAM.gov. We will allow that exception for the application process, but we will not be processing any grant awards until the UEI is secured in this coming fiscal year. So we understand that that's a little bit out of your hands.
Thank you.
I guess start now. There's, even if you choose not to apply for a grant, it's not a bad idea to register in SAM.gov and get yourself an identifier number for the future.
Thank you. So the next set of questions has to do with eligibility in relationship to funding pictures. So the first one is, if we are a state arts resource recipient, can we apply for Spark the Arts as an additional award? And that's from Melissa Zeff.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Yes, you may. However, in terms of the match, if you're in a tier 2 and tier 3 county, you will not be able to use funds coming from North Carolina Arts Council in that match. Is that right, Vicki?
Thank you. So we also have some folks who've received re-granted grassroots arts program funding from their local arts council. Would that preclude funding from Spark the Arts? You know, they see that in terms of the information, the Arts Council itself wouldn't be able to apply, but can the grantees that receive funding apply? And that's from Laurel, who has a fantastically wonderful last name that I will not take on for myself, so I apologize.
So Laurel, the answer to that is yes, you can. But again, same with SARs. If you're in a tier 2 and tier 3 county that has a match, you cannot use those funds as your match. So you would have to then carve out something else, and it can't also be the same grant that you're applying for. So if you're doing a project grant that is specific, if that's what you're getting your funds for as a project, it can't be the same project. It needs to be different. So you need to make sure that those are separate funds and separate projects.
Fantastic. It looks like, I love that people are interacting in the chat to let us know that the information is landing. As a former classroom educator, I feel that's wonderful. The next question is, can a nonprofit apply for Spark the Arts funding if they receive funds from their local county that are designated ARPA dollars as well?
That's a great question. These dollars are federal dollars. So again, if it's as long as you're not in a tier 2, tier 3, that's going to require a match. As long as you're not listing your match as other federal ARPA dollars, you could apply.
And apologies, that's from Nicolay Morgan. There's a few questions actually, so thank you so much. The next one is, would it be possible for a nonprofit who's applying for a Spark the Arts grant to be an applicant as well as act as a fiscal agent for another entity in the same category? And that's from Martha Connerton as well as Karen Eve Bain.
Yeah, no. Thank you. We appreciate you asking it because I think it's really important for other people to hear. You can serve, you can either apply for a Spark the Arts grant, or you can be a fiscal agent, but just for conflict of interest, we're not going to allow you to be able to serve in both capacities. So thank you all for asking that question, because I think it's really important for folks to hear that. Right. But if you are receiving, again, those grassroots arts dollars from, so that's typically local arts councils or local government entities, you can serve for up to 3 fiscal, you can be a fiscal agent for up to 3 grants to the North Carolina Arts Council. And we actually encourage it. I think that will really help. I know local arts councils last year, some of them could only do this for one organization, but this would allow you to help maybe potentially up to 3 other organizations or entities within your county and bring additional arts funding for them for next year.
Thank you. We have just a few minutes left, so I'm going to try to highlight the ones that feel most appropriate in terms of broader audiences. I think some of the questions are actually programmatic, and so I would definitely encourage any of you that have those programmatic questions to reach out to your relevant program director just in case we don't get to them. We will make what efforts are possible in terms of what information we have to reach out to you, but I have some names look really unfamiliar, so I suspect we have some new folks, and so there might be kind of like we'll figure out how to address that, but that's just to keep you apprised of the process. So we do have Mel Huey, who joined us, saying that they are taking over for their previous grants manager. Should they start a new profile in GoSmart or use the previous profile?
Mel, you can reach out to any of us to help, or you can reach out to Karen. We are happy to go into GoSmart and we can change out the username, the email address, so that way you'll have access to previous information, applications, as well as final reports that have been previously submitted. So don't create a new account. We will get you set up and get you going.
Fantastic, thank you. So another eligibility question, are folks eligible to apply for Spark the Arts as well as organization support grants? From Julia Munn.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, you can. Again, you'll need to keep that separate. So organizational support grant is really to support the operations of your organization, and you can pin that amount specifically to a person's staff salary, utilities, those operational needs that an organization needs to operate. And then keep, again, if you're in a tier 2, tier 3, and you need to supply a match, make sure that that is separate from where your organizational support grant is going. So yes, you can apply for it, but they need to be distinctly separate.
Thank you so much, Darren. That actually answered Phil Reynolds' question about the difference between Spark the Arts and Organization Support Grant. The next question I think we should tackle, so there's a little bit of my personal bias getting involved, was there an approved listing of where letters of support can come from? Any sort of guidance in that space?
Yeah, I think on there, you need minimum of 1. I think for letters of support, quality over quantity. If you have a main collaborator or a few main key people that are involved in this project, and you've told us who they are within your narrative. So say, I'm just going to put her name out there, Nina Freelon. If Nina Freelon is going to headline a certain event, it would be wonderful if we had some evidence from her that says, yes, I've spoken to this organization, I'm committed to this date if this grant was to get awarded. Those kinds of things, whether it's venues or other partners or specific headliners that you're ready to name, if we could, that just adds credibility and feasibility to your proposed project.
We had a few questions about after school versus school day experiences. And so I think that's a level of nuance, and we've also addressed it a few times. I will encourage folks to simply contact the discipline program director, as well as fold Kathleen into the conversation. So reach out to theater and literature because you're doing a theater project, but it's got youth. Let's fold Kathleen, and then we'll figure out through the conversation in terms of how we want to divide that. The last question I think we have time to tackle is, can we offer valid examples of the enhanced marketing campaign? And that's from Nicolay Morgan.
That's a great question. And we did have a few Spark the Arts grants last year that focused on marketing. Again, because this is about audiences and the community, the story that you tell in that focus needs to focus on audience re-engagement or audience inclusion. However, how are you going to get the word out to people? Maybe you need a new system behind the scenes to help you reach the audiences there. So tell that compelling story about why you need that audience there, and then go ahead and talk about, well, in order to do this fabulous programming and reach the audiences that we wanted to do, we need to bring in a website consultant, or we need additional support to do, those support any kind of software behind the scenes that's going to enable us to do a better job reaching those audiences.
So we have reached our time, and I did see a few more questions, so I got them jotted down. And what I'm going to do for all of our attendees here, just so you're aware of the process, I'll share them with our team that's here, and we'll basically work to farm out the information and get things to make sure that we're closing the loop in terms of what questions that you might have. But we do want to stay respectful of our times, or your time. So we will close the questioning session.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Vicki. Well, thank you all for coming to this webinar. We hope that you all have a better understanding of applying for grants through the North Carolina Arts Council and a better understanding of Spark the Arts grants. I will leave you with this one statistic. Last year, we got over 200 applications. We were able to fund 130 of them. We funded 60% of people that applied. This is a very attainable grant, and we really hope that you seek out this opportunity. Speak with us, get to know us. We want to get to know you. So thank you all. Have a great day.